Hello, and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of your time out of each and every week and spending it right here with us on NAC TV. I'm Eoin Devereux, joined, almost as always, by Casper Wehrhahn. Casper, good to have you back in.
Good to be here again for another edition of the Story Behind the Stories, and of course the paper. We got another one sent off to Killarney and printed and circulating, which it was a bit of a bumpy ride this week, when we had some technical difficulties.
Oh yeah, slight technical difficulties of we lost the entire paper for about 10-15 minutes, but we found it. Whether you like whether we found it or not is up to your own opinion. But some technical issues with the computer, and there's a sort of a home-based computer that we all work off of. It's a network that comes together, and the main component of it disappeared on us about 2 hours before we were sending it off to get printed. So it was a concern, we're not going to lie. It was a touch concerning there for about 10 minutes. It didn't, but unfortunately it didn't. It went from a concern down to just a hubbub, fortunately. There have been times in the past where it's been a whole kerfuffle, but we found ways to manage through.
We sure did, yeah. I was getting concerned because I was just like, okay, I can't connect to the computer, or I just had like that spinny wheel saying it's buffering,
Yeah.
and then I just lost connection completely. And I was concerned that we were actually going to lose the internet connection, which is, that would have really been a sticky situation for us because, at least if we have that connection, we can just, take it from the main computer and we can still send it off to Killarney with our program there since we have connection on a different computer without having to connect through the network to the main computer that acts as our hub. Thankfully, we didn't lose that network connection, but it was throwing a bit of a fit there for a while. I don't know what happened there, but it was a little bit cranky on a Wednesday, and then it eventually booted back into gear, so everything was all good.
We know what it was, Casper. It's internet goblins. They're always trying to cause trouble, always trying to get into issues here. We're going to get you, you little sons of... But never mind.
One of these days.
We did get what we needed to do done, and we were able to get things progressing, and that's on the final page of the newspaper. 16 pages this week. Now, we've talked about in the past, why we do certain amounts of pages, 16, 20, 24, 40. And again, I've always sort of been very straightforward and honest with you on this. We probably could have done 20, but we only had about 6 3/4 pages of ads. And if you're a loyal viewer of the show, around 40 to 60% ad to content is what we like to have. It makes sense on a consistent basis. So that's why we went down to 16 pages. Don't worry, we're not closing tomorrow. It's just one of those lulls during the year. When it comes to newspapers, there's a few periods of time each and every year where everybody just sort of takes a breath and maybe the advertising slows down a bit. The start of the year is a big one. The first couple weeks of January leading into February always seem to be a little bit slow. And this is one of those ones as well. It's the dog days of summer type thing. It's just too hot for everybody maybe to advertise, but that's just the reality of it. But really, and if you know the show and you've watched me, you know for the most part, if it were 95% content and 5% ads, I'd be okay with that. Maybe not after a couple weeks because I wouldn't be getting paid, but in the grand scheme, I prefer news to ads, but ads are nice. I'm not going to lie.
Yep, they do help keep us running, so.
Yeah. But the content, though, spot on this week. We could have gone 20. We went 16. We were able to squeeze it in. Although having said that, I did have to sit on one story I was working on in regard to the water slide. The new water slide in Neepawa is completed. We do have a picture and a cut line in this week's paper on that. There's going to be a more expansive story that goes with it. It was planned for this week's edition of the Banner Press, but a combination of factors, it had to be bumped. One, of course, as I said, we only went 16 pages as opposed to 20, so less space. And the other reason was a whole heck of a bunch of funnel cloud activity that was happening. We were able to get in a picture of one of the funnel clouds that was in the air in the Arden area on the 27th of June. If you want to see that picture, it is an amazing picture. Brian Gowan, thank you very much for forwarding that to us and allowing us the ability to be able to use that picture. It is a great picture of a funnel cloud sighted just east of Arden, because that was the last week or so. It's been kind of crazy with all these little warnings bleeping and blopping on the phones and all this stuff going on, hasn't it, Casper?
Yeah, it feels like pretty much every day almost we've had some sort of warning or a watch going on. Tornado warning's very common, and it's just like, this is crazy. Like, in all honesty, we've had more tornado watches than I recall having like my entire life in just the span of a few days.
Legitimately, within the last 5-6 days, we've had that little warning that goes off on your cell phone about 3 times, and that is a rarity for us. It does happen, obviously, in the United States, a prime example of that, but down in the Pembina Valley area, Winkler, Morden, Altona, they always seem to be dealing with similar situations like that, but never as far north as Neepawa for the most part. There have been historic occurrences and occasions, but not with that consistency. Hopefully it's still going to be the exception as opposed to the rule. So we'll find out, I guess. But if you want to see that picture, beautiful picture, as I said, by Brian Gowan, it's on page 2 of this week's edition of the Banner Press, along with a picture, the official ribbon cutting, or should I say pool noodle cutting for the water slide. Now we're going to have that full story with more pictures and a lot more information. It's going to be appearing in the July 7th edition of the Banner Press. But we still got some pretty good content here, and right on the front page was the big thing. And Casper, you were down there, you were able to get a whole heck of a lot of pictures from graduation 2023.
Yeah, so of course it's a graduation season right now. The NACI grad took place on the 27th as well. So we sort of all managed to get into the arena, it seems, right before the rain started. And then as things started to get going, I could actually hear a rumble of thunder from indoors. And sure enough, when I came out afterwards, it was pouring. But yeah, ceremonies went underway that day for the NACI graduates for 2023. Well, what can you say? I'm sure everyone is excited to be concluding their schooling at Neepawa for the year. Well, for good, really.
Yeah.
Until they go on to college and all that sort of thing, whatever they decide to do. And, you know, I hope they have a good sort of path ahead of them. It looked like everyone was having a good time there, sort of reliving some memories before getting their diplomas. And they all did a really good job.
It's one of those things, there's certain benchmarks in everyone's lifetime that you do remember and you think of fondly. And hopefully this is going to be one of those ones for them. Obviously, for me, mine was a long time ago. I don't remember it quite as much. Just it's so long ago, but I do remember it being very special for my family. I don't know what that means. Does that mean they didn't think I was going to make it through? It was like, oh God, thank goodness. Oh, jeez. But that's something that's special for each and every family to have that accomplishment. And you do have to consider these things accomplishments. I do genuinely. There's too much emphasis sometimes, Casper, on the diploma, the degree, the post-secondary. And I don't know about that. That's important, but high school as well is very important. It trains you. It's supposed to train you for that next step in your life and whatever you want to move forward to. I don't know if it does that anymore. You've been in high school sooner than I have, But what was your takeaway from your graduation and what it meant for you?
Oh, I mean, well, for the one thing, no more tests. Woo! No more homework. But no, it was definitely a big moment. I mean, of course, when you're in the moment, sort of going through the ceremony, of course, it's the lawn ceremony. You're wearing a lot of stuff. It can get warm, so you're kind of like, oh, I'm bored. When can we get on with this?
When am I ever gonna wear this hat again?
Yeah, but. It's still a very special day, and it is a big part of your life. It marks, your next milestone, and from there you sort of just figure out where you want to go. And, some people know right away. That's great. Some people don't know right away, and they go around, they explore, and try and figure out what they want to do. Maybe some people who originally knew what they wanted to do figure, actually, I'm going to change things up. So there's a lot of possibilities ahead of you, but just getting on that road and eventually sort of getting to do your own thing and moving forward from there is pretty great.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And you cite a very good example of that. Sometimes people move on immediately. Sometimes they still have to figure themselves out. I think I'm a pretty decent example of that. I immediately went to school, went to university afterwards. And I didn't, looking back at it now, I probably shouldn't have. I probably should have taken that year and figured out what I really wanted, because it was just a waste of time, if I'm being honest. And I left university before I finished it because I was just not happy. So I was one of those ones that discovered myself and what I wanted to be. I didn't go back to journalism and media to get my journalism media degree until I was 31 years old. So I spent my 20s, let me tell you, if you ever meet me out and about and you want to ask me what I did in my 20s, I got some stories for you. But, that's neither here nor there right now. But again, there is no set way where you have to find yourself and you have to find your success. For me, I didn't find it until I was in my 30s. For you, you're in your 20s right now, and you went right into post-secondary and you found something and you moved forward on it. There's no wrong way to do that.
Yeah. I did take a couple years before that, just sort of working and saving money, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but I did eventually find a program, and it's just like, this sounds interesting, I want to try this. It's got the longest name ever, Interactive Media Arts. So I went and I did that in Brandon for a couple years. It was a great program. I learned a lot of things. Coding was not my strong suit, and I should have kept up with that skill, but I unfortunately did let it slip. But that's something, if I want to, I can always get back into it. I still have notes. There's a lot of great tutorials online as well that take you through things. It didn't have necessarily that journalism in it, but it did have a lot of design elements, which is what we deal with a lot, like every day here at the paper. And I've always sort of enjoyed writing in my free time whenever I have an idea, but I hadn't done it really in like a reporting sense. But coming here and getting into the groove of things, it was actually a very natural progression to sort of get into that, and I've enjoyed it ever since.
And again, that's it. It's about finding yourself, and that's part of graduation, is that journey of discovery as well. So we congratulate each and every one of those individuals on that success, and we wish them the best moving forward into whatever dreams they want to achieve. So if you want to share in that, you can find it in this week's edition of the Neepawa Banner Press. All right, we've talked a little bit about the storm clouds that were rolling through our area, and we talked a little bit about the water slide. So we're going to get into some of the meat and potatoes of the news, the types of things that aren't as fun, aren't as glamorous or whatnot, but there are the things you definitely need to know. And that is leading into a recent council meeting for the town of Neepawa. There were a few things that were discovered and talked about and whatnot, but two things really stood out for me that I thought was kind of interesting. I thought I'd share with you. The first was this story where they're talking about taking a closer look at some of the sight lines, some of the trees along Main Street in Neepawa, the main highway. For years, there has been that row of trees along there. And if you've driven in Neepawa, you know of certain streets where you're turning onto Main Street, where it's a little difficult to be able to see that line of sight of oncoming traffic, where you're almost out into traffic in order to see traffic. So there was an incident recently, a accident there. Fortunately, the individuals involved were not seriously injured, but still an accident had occurred. And the individual brought it forward to administration for the town of Neepawa saying, hey, maybe something needs to be looked at here. This is not safe. So they did take a look at it. They have some suggestions that they brought forward to town council and said maybe this is something that deserves examination and maybe some alterations done. Council took the information, took it under advisement, discussed it, and said, you know what? I think you guys might be right. I think maybe we do need to. Most definitely. The one example they cited, Casper, actually was that one street, and you'll probably agree with me because you're out and about as well with the job and having lived here, is the street right next to the Dairy Queen. When you're coming from where the curling club is, driving out towards the highway, and you're trying to turn, especially if you're trying to turn left, it seems, you're almost all the way out there to be able to get the sight line of the vehicles coming from the west there, aren't you?
Yeah, there's definitely a few tricky spots in and around Neepawa. I can definitely recall some along Mountain Avenue here that are tricky as well, but not a whole lot you can do for those. There's no trees blocking it. It's just, how the town is laid out and parking, etc. That makes it a little tricky, so you just gotta be a little careful. But yeah, definitely along the main street there, especially at the Dairy Queen corner there, 5th and Main. That's a tough spot. You do have to sort of creep out an egregious amount in order to properly see, which is dangerous. Like you don't.
Yeah.
For
you're
one
in
thing,
traffic,
you're like in traffic almost sometimes, which not good. But then if you don't creep out enough, then you're still not really seeing who's coming, so you might get into an accident anyway. So you don't want that. So it's really great that council is taking a good look at this, and it sounds like the solution that they've come up with will make it a lot better in the future. So I'm really looking forward to that. So it'll definitely make the community a bit safer.
That's right. They are discussing it right now. They're going to be sending people out to look and come back with some suggestions on what could be done. Ultimately, from the sounds of it, what could be done if they proceed forward is that they remove 1, maybe 2 trees from the edging, from that little space between the road and the sidewalk, that little greenery. But not all of it. Don't worry. They're not going to just strip it all down so you can see everything. They still like the beautification that these trees do provide for the community. But they're just going to take away 1, maybe 2 from the corner, from the very edges of those, just so you have a better line of sight. Again, these are still discussions that are on the go right now, so things could change. Maybe they don't go forward with it. Maybe they do. Once we know one way or another, we will have that update for you in the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. But if you'd like to learn a little bit more for right now, you can find that story. It's on page 2 of this week's edition of the newspaper. A little further down into the paper, right next to Helen's Kitchen and our weekly recipe, we've got a story on pretty much the other side of town in regard to the Yellowhead Center. They came forward with a request to put some electronic signage up on the property. They want to be able to showcase and spotlight some of the events that are going on or are coming to the Yellowhead, whether it's the arena or the hall, for the public a little more. They feel like some electronic signage, digital signage, would be a little bit better way to do that. So they put forward the request to council. They saw the merits of it, so they did approve it. No one was objecting to it. There was one call into planning district that was asking for clarification on a little bit of information. They weren't objecting to it per se, they just wanted some clarification on what would be required of it, and they got that clarification. Now, if you're curious as to what they're going to be putting up there, don't worry. from the sounds of it, it's not going to be a big Vegas banner. It's not going to be like Caesar's Palace with flashing lights and, in your face. It's something similar to what we can actually see over at the high school. On the corner there for NACI, they do have signage of themselves that indicates what's going on and some of the things that are happening. So it's not going to be intrusive for the community and for that area, which is very important. You don't want those big, bright sort of flashing. A good example of it would be the Keystone Center in Brandon. They've got the huge one, but that's not in a residential area. That's on a main street, and there are residences just right across from the Yellowhead. So you want to be thoughtful when it comes to their considerations as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you don't want it to be too distracting as well with all the stuff that goes on in that area for safety too. But the sign out front of the school there, it's a very nice looking sign, as you said, and definitely will work well if they do something of that effect at the Yellowhead too. And yeah, I think it'll be good for them to go forward with this to promote what's going on at the Yellowhead, because there's a lot that goes on there, but some people might not know this is happening like right now or like maybe a week from now. So it'll hopefully get more people showing up to those events and supporting the hall.
That's one thing. One of the councillors actually said there's been times where they've driven by the Yellowhead and they've seen the parking lot full with vehicles and they had no idea there was an event going on. And that's one of the examples of, you assume people know, but maybe they don't know. That's the thing. Of course, if it were up to me, I'd say maybe if you wanted to do some advertising in your local newspaper, maybe if you wanted to do that, that might get the message out. But hey, what do I know? I'm not saying anything. Never mind. But that's neither here nor there. But this is a good step in the right direction, most definitely. I think it's not going to be intrusive. It's going to be able to help to get the message out there. So I think it's a real positive, because the Yellowhead Center is our arena for the foreseeable future. The costs of new construction right now is so much. We wouldn't be able to put together a brand new arena out on the highway or something like that, with big signage and all that. So we've got to make do with what we've got, because we've got a pretty good arena. We've got a pretty good hall out there. So let's showcase it and make it last. So if you want to learn a little bit more, obviously, it is on page 6 of this week's edition. This week as well, we got a stripped down version of the Farmer's Advocate. It's 2 pages this week in the center. A lot of ag-related news. Casper, you have an ag-related story as well. It's not in the Advocate, though. It's in our regular features about an event we've covered in the past, if I remember correctly. I don't remember whether it was last year or a year before yourself or Kira Patterson went out there for a day or something like that.
Yeah. I actually had the pleasure of attending this event in 2022. And it's the annual field day that the Manitoba Crop Diversification Centre puts on. They hold it every year and gives producers and anyone who's interested really updates on research they've been conducting and that sort of thing. And they're going to hold it this year on August 9th. Unfortunately, it is a Wednesday, I believe, so I won't be able to go down there myself, but looking forward to receiving notes from the day and pictures as well. We're anticipating that, so hopefully we'll be able to get that in the future. But we have details on that, when it's starting, where it's located, on page 15 here. I only attended the 1 year. I don't recall who covered it in the past, if we did, but it's a really interesting day. It takes you through a variety of different topics. One of them is actually recurring again this year, and that's mustard as a natural fumigant for potatoes. That was a fascinating topic for me, and I go through it a little bit.
Come on,
I
Casper.
go through it a little bit.
Come on, be straight. Come on, really? Really?
Yeah, as someone who is not a farmer, I did find it quite interesting. But since it's a recurring topic, I sort of went through very briefly what they talked about the last year. So I'm curious to see what they'll come up with this year. I know they were still looking at some different things there. So I'm very interested to see what will happen that way. But yeah, it sounds like they have a good lineup of topics set up.
That's great, and it's wonderful. I do feel like it's very important that even if you don't feel like you have that direct connection to agriculture and farming, and that's really hard not to have that connection in a rural community such as Neepawa. But if you feel like you don't, these are the types of things that are very good to sort of teach you these types of things and the significance behind it. We're not saying you have to attend it, no, but just take a moment or two, read the story, educate yourself, learn a little bit about such a significant, important industry and all the different facets of it that affect you on a regular basis. And actually that goes quite well with the Farmer's Advocate, as I said. We've got a couple pages for it this week talking about the latest updates on the cattle for Canada, and as well crop and weather reports for the prairies. I mean, these types of little things, we always appreciate Sean Kabak, who is based out of Portage-la-Prairie. Their office always shares the information with us. We are always so appreciative of Sean for keeping us in the know on this and letting us know what's going on in and about our region. Being a smaller newspaper, we'd love to be able to get out there ourselves, but there's only so many hours in the day, and there's only so many people that can get out and about. So it's difficult to be able to make that happen. So these types of features, these types of individuals who are part of the industry and share their knowledge with us is always greatly appreciated. So once again, even if you don't feel like you're a part of the ag industry, you should check out the Farmer's Advocate and learn a little bit about the ag industry and how it does affect you and me. There's so much more that we could be discussing this week about the newspaper, even in the 16 pages, but there's only so much time really to be able to do that. We haven't even touched the sports pages. We got updates from William Morton and their track and field team. We appreciate that. We've got updates from the Santa Clara Baseball League, always exciting, and even the Neepawa Titans. They're got a lot of off-season activity on the go. So, but you're going to have to pick up a copy of the paper to learn a little bit about that. And you can do that anywhere out and about in Neepawa or outlying communities, even as far down as Brandon. We have physical copies of the paper that even go all the way down there. So I'm sure at any sort of gas station or grocery store or anywhere in our readership area, you're going to be able to track something down. So that's roughly about it for us. Casper, always good to have you in here this week and sort of taking the weight off me, letting people not have to listen to me talk for a half hour.
Absolutely happy to provide some relief, as it were.
And I'm sure the viewer is very happy for that as well. But we do appreciate you always tuning in. And if you have any story suggestions or ideas for us, we always appreciate those as well and try our best to track them down. And you can send them to news@neepawabanner.com or via via telephone, actually, at 476-3401, the number we can be reached at, 476-3401. Any story suggestions you have, we try and get out and about. If you have any pictures or anything like that you want to send us, that's appreciated as well. So as usual, we thank you once again for tuning in right here on NAC TV and spending a little bit of time with us as we went through these stories behind the stories. Have another great week and a wonderful Canada Day.